4:58 p.m., which would be 21:58 Israel Standard Time, Jerusalem time. It's the right time to proceed with Makos 13, Daf Yomi. It is the 8th night of the Omer, the 8th day of the Omer, which is 1 week and 1 day, and it's Chesed of Gevura. Makos 13, top of the page, with the words Me'alim hayu sachar leleviim, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir Omer, lo hayu ma'alim lahem schar. Yehoshua l'svara shehayu ba, Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, lo haya choser l'svara shehayu ba. The unintentional murderers would pay a fee to the Levites as rent for their living quarters in the cities of refuge, which were Levite cities. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says they would not pay a fee to them, but would reside rent-free, as they are required to live there by Torah law. They also disagree with regard to the status of the unintentional murderer when he returns home after the death of the high priest. He returns to the same public office that he occupied prior to his exile. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says he does not return to the office that he occupied. And that's the Mishnah. Now, the Gemara starts. Amar Rav Kahana, Machloikis, B'sheish, Demar Sofer Lachem, L'klita, Umar Sofer Lachem, L'chol Tzarchechem. Aval Baravim Shnayim, Divrei Kol Hayumal Lehem Sachar. Rav Kahana said this dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir is with regard to payment of rent to the Levite landlords in the 6 cities of refuge designated in the Torah and in the book of Joshua. As one sage, Rabbi Yehuda holds in that verse, they shall be cities of refuge for you. Numbers 35:11. The term "for you" means that the cities shall be for you only by providing refuge, and therefore they must pay rent to the Levites. On one stage, Rabbi Meir holds that the term "for you" means for all your needs, therefore they are not required to pay rent. But with regard to the 42 additional Levite cities, which also served as cities of refuge, everyone agrees that the unintentional murderers would pay rent to the Levite landlords. Okay. Amar le Rava. Ha vale lachem lechol tzorechechem mashma el amar Rava machloikis pa'avoim mishnayim demar savar va'alehem titnu ki hanach leklita umar savar va'alehem titnu ki hanach umar hanach lechol tzorechechem av haninami lechol tzorechechem av b'sheish divrei hakol Lo hayu ma'alim lahen sachar. Rava said to them, the term "for you" certainly indicates for all your needs. Therefore, the dispute cannot be as Rav Kahana explained it. Rather, Rava said the dispute is only with regard to the 42 Levite cities. As one sage, Rabbi Yehuda holds that from the verse, they shall be the 6 cities of refuge, and beside them you shall give 42 cities. Number 35:6 is derived that the 42 cities are like these original 6 cities, only insofar as with regard to the unintentional murderer being admitted. And one sage, Rabbi Meir, holds that from the verse, there shall be 6 cities of refuge, and beside them you shall give 42 cities, is derived that the 42 cities are like these original 6 cities in every sense, just as those 6 cities are given to you, meaning the unintentional murders for all your needs. So too these 42 cities were given to you, the unintentional murders for all your needs. But with regard to the 6 specifically designated as cities of refuge, everyone agrees that unintentional murderers would not pay Levites a fee. Okay, Chozer l'shra shehaya ba kulitano habanan yishav l'shpachta ve'el achuzas avoisa ve'ashuv l'mishpachtoi hushav ve'enu shav l'ba shechaziku avoisa divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer afu shav l'ma shechaziku avoisa el achuzas avoisa k'avoisa. The Mishnah teaches that there is a dispute as to whether the unintentional murderer returns to the same public office that he occupied prior to his exile. On a related note, the sages taught with regard to a Hebrew slave liberated during the Jubilee year, about whom it is written, and he returns to his family, and to the estate of his fathers he shall return. Leviticus 25:41. He returns to his family, but he does not return to that status of prominence and honor that his ancestors held. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says he even returns to that status of prominence and honor that his ancestors held. From the phrase, to the estate of his fathers he shall return, it is derived that he returns to be like his fathers. And likewise the same is true with regard to an exile sent to a city of refuge, as when the verse states, to the estate of his fathers he shall return. The term he shall return is redundant, and it serves to include the unintentional murderer. Kedetanya Yeshuv Rozech El Eretz Achuzato LeEretz Achuzaso Hu Shav Ve'eno Shav Lema Shechaziku Avoisav Dir Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Meir Omer Af Hu Shav Lema Shechaziku Avoisav Gamar Shiva Mehasam. The Gemara asks, what is the meaning of, and likewise the same is true with regard to an exile? The Gemara explains, as it is taught in a Braita, with regard to the verse, the murderer shall return to his ancestral land. Numbers 35:28, from which it is derived that he returns to his ancestral land, but he does not return to that status of prominence and honor that his ancestors held. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says he even returns to that status of prominence and honor that his ancestors held. Rabbi Meir derives this by means of a verbal analogy from there, meaning between the terms of return written with regard to the unintentional murderer and the term of return written with regard to the Hebrew slave. The verbal analogy teaches that just as a Hebrew slave returns to his father's estate and the status of prominence held by his ancestors, so too the unintentional murderer returns to his ancestral land and to the status of prominence held by his ancestors. Hadrolach Elohein Hagolin. We shall return to you, Elohein Hagolin. And now we start a new parak called Elohein Halokin, or Elohein Haloikin, which means these are the people who are flogged. It's all about the whips. This new chapter here. Okay? The Mishnah states, Elohein Haloikin, Haba Alachleisai, Ve'alachleis Aviv, Ve'alachleis Imoy, Ve'alachleis Ishtoi, Ve'alachleis Aviv, Ve'alachleis Aviv, Hanida. Almana Lachain Gadol, Gurush Vechalus Lachain Hedit, Mamzeres Resina, L'Yisrael, Bas Yisrael, Enosin Mamzero. After enumerating in tractate Sanhedrin those liable to be executed in the previous chapter, those liable to be exiled. Okay. After enumerating in tractate Sanhedrin those liable to be executed in the previous chapter, those are liable to be exiled. The Mishnah proceeds to enumerate those liable to receive lashes. These are the people who are flogged by Torah law for violating a prohibition. One who engages in intercourse with his sister, or with his father's sister, or with his mother's sister, or with his wife's sister, or with his brother's wife, or with the wife of his father's brother, okay, or with a menstruating woman. Likewise, one is flogged in the case of a widow who married a high priest, a divorcee or a chalutza who married an ordinary priest, a mamzeret, meaning a daughter born of an incestuous or adulterous relationship, or a Gibeonite woman who married a Jew of unflawed lineage, and a Jewish woman of unflawed lineage who married a Gibeonite or a mamzer, would be a son born from basically a bastard, literally. A mamzer, an illegitimate son. Right. Okay. Almana grusha chayavin alea mishum shneim shemas. Grusha v'chalutza ein chayavin mishamecha bilvad. The Mishnah elaborates that a woman was both a widow and a divorcee, as after she was widowed, she remarried and was divorced. The high priest is liable to receive 2 sets of lashes for marrying her due to the violation of 2 different prohibitions, and that of his marrying a widow and that of his marrying a divorced woman. If a woman was both a divorcee and a chalutza from 2 different men, an ordinary priest who marries her is liable to receive only 1 set of lashes due to the violation of 1 prohibition alone. Ha'tameh shachos ha'kodesh ve'haba ha'megdash tameh ve'achal v'chelef v'dam nois v'bilu tameh. The Mishnah continues enumerating those liable to receive lashes: a ritually impure person who ate sacrificial food, and one who enters the temple while ritually impure, and one who eats the forbidden fat of a domesticated animal, or blood, or notar, which is leftover flesh from an offering after the time allotted for its consumption, or pigul, an offering invalidated due to the intent to sprinkle its blood, burn its fats on the altar, or consume it beyond its designated time, or one who partakes of an offering that became impure is flogged. Okay? Hashoichet malach v'zoich v'chamis b'mezach ve'oichel v'oisim v'lachem v'megipurim v'hameh hatem es hashemen v'hameh hatem es v'toyeres and one who slaughters a sacrificial animal or sacrifices it on an altar outside the temple courtyard, and one who eats leavened bread on Passover, and one who eats on Yom Kippur, and one who performs labor on Yom Kippur, and one who blends the anointing oil for non-sacred use, and one who blends the incense that was burned on the altar in the sanctuary for non-sacred use, and one who applies the anointing oil, and one who eats unslaughtered animal or bird carcasses, or treifot, which are animals or birds with a condition that will lead to their death within 12 months, or repugnant creatures, or creeping animals, they're all liable to receive lashes. Achal tevel maser rishon shloin is truma maser sheni. If one ate untied produce, meaning produce from which truma and tithes were not separated, or the first tithe produce whose truma of the tithe was not taken, or truma, tithe, produce, or sacrificial food that was not redeemed, he is liable to receive lashes. Okay. With regard to the measure for liability for eating forbidden food, the Mishnah asks, how much does one need to eat from untithed produce and be liable to receive lashes? Rabbi Shimon says if one ate any amount of untithed produce, he's liable to 50 lashes. And the rabbis say he's liable only if he eats an olive bulk, which is the minimum measure characterized as eating. Rabbi Shimon said to them, "Do you not concede with me with regard to one who eats an ant of any size? He's liable to receive lashes." The rabbi said, "Yes." Rabbi Shimon, he receives lashes for eating any ant of any size due to the fact that it is intact entirely from the is an intact entity in the form of its creation, and that is what the Torah prohibited. Rabbi Shimon says to them, one kernel of wheat is also in the form of its creation, and therefore one should be liable to receive lashes for eating any intact entity. Okay, Gemara. Gemara says, Chayve krisos katani chayve misos bezin logatani masni samani Rabbi Kiva hidetanya chayve krisos v'echad chayve misos bezin. Okay, apropos to the list of in the Mishnah of those liable to receive lashes, the Gemara notes the Tana teaches those liable to receive excision from the world to come, karet, as most of the cases enumerated at the beginning of the Mishnah include actions that are not only entail violation of a prohibition, but also are punishable by karet. But the Tana does not teach those liable to be executed with the court-imposed death penalties among those liable to receive lashes. Apparently, lashes are not administered to those who violate a prohibition punishable by execution. The Gemara asks, whose opinion is exposed in the Mishnah? It is the opinion of Rabbi Kiva, as it is taught in a Braita, that there is a Tanaitic dispute. Both those liable to receive karet and those liable to be executed with court-imposed death penalties